Hello, this is Darrell Castle with today's Castle Report. This is the 11th day of December in the year 2020. On this report, I will be talking about the aristocracy, how the aristocracy over the centuries in various societies have adopted to changing conditions, but very little has changed along the way. They like to control things, and things always seem fouled up under their control, but they tell us it's not their fault, never their fault. Right now, the aristocracy, the ruling elite, the powers that be, whatever you want to call them, are facing a very difficult set of problems, as we all are. First, this week has been a happy one for the Castle family as we celebrate the 68th birthday of my wife, Joan, the family mama. So happy birthday to Joan, the family daughter. Honored her mother as best one can via video conference from Los Angeles. Now to our daily report throughout history. Advanced societies have always had their aristocracies, and the aristocrats have always had their methods of controlling the people and retaining power. Kingdoms and empires are born and they die just like we do. When the aristocrats can keep the people foolishly unaware of the scam that keeps them in power, the system works fine. When the people start to become aware, they become educated, that the aristocrats are in power based on a giant deception or scam. Then the people quickly lose interest and the whole thing falls apart. This pattern has been repeated for centuries. Many people can see that the hard times they are experiencing because of the virus are not being felt by their leaders. The hypocrisy is so evident from the mostly Democrat leaders of our cities and our states. These things are starting to alarm even the woke people. The aristocracy that rules us reacts to the virus by grabbing more and more centralized control over the masses. The concept of individual freedom, individual rights disappear in a torrent of words about the common good. For centuries, the aristocracy controlled the masses by using religion. They had the only route to God, you see. God wanted it that way. The people could not read. Their holy books were in other languages anyway, so they accepted their misery for centuries. The printing press changed much of that, changed it quickly, because with reading came a greater understanding of their condition and what those books actually said. In 1789, it all came to a head in France as the nation exploded in revolution. Roughly 17,000 members of the religious order and the royal aristocracy lost their heads to the guillotine. Thousands died in other ways. Revolutions often bring changes that are worse than before. This one brought the reign of Napoleon and a secular nation in France that still exists today. In our modern age, the ruling elite, whether elected or bureaucratic, use science instead of religion. Science is today's religion, in other words. To control us, we are often told to follow the science, listen to the experts. Many groups of power seekers compete for control over us. Each has its own group of science experts. They all want power. They all want to control us in their own way rather than in some other way. The cold, unfeeling nature of the aristocracy has not changed much since revolutionary France. The religious aristocracy in 1789 France blamed the starving condition of the people on the royal system, and the royal system blamed it on the religious order. Finally, the people had enough. They cut the heads off all of them. Today, the Democrat order has Donald Trump to blame for every wrong turn concerning the virus. But just as in 1789, problems are starting to emerge that may not be solvable without long-lasting results. We in the modern world are far too cynical to allow the elites to control us with religion. Those in the Islamic world, at least to a certain degree, might be exceptions, but for the rest of us, we are controlled through science. Trust the science. Listen to the science. Let the experts explain the science. That is the mantra of today's world. One group of power-mad aristocrats has their science experts. The other group has their science experts. Belief changes from one group to the other. From time to time, science's hold on us never wavers. In the 1970s book, Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. That was all the rage back then. It was all the science at college. The book addressed various environmental disasters, which Miss Carson told us were upon us. Just around the corner, they're going to happen, she said, the result of all these disasters, coupled with overpopulation and global cooling. That was the thing then, global cooling. These things would be worldwide starvation and poverty. I read the book, and I was alarmed by Miss Carson's conclusions. So I took the book to a professor that I respected in the science department at my old college. He said, yeah, I read it. It's nonsense. Don't worry about it. His statement changed my life because I was able to overcome the strong desire to just accept the science at face value. It also taught me not to believe the adage, all smart people feel that way, which has been a help. In my legal career, those were the naive days of global cooling. The science had to change to keep its hold on people because global cooling failed miserably, so global warming became the new threat. The planet was heating up. The polar ice caps were melting. Polar bears had no habitat in which to live. When much of that was proven to be just fake photos and lying propaganda, the science again had to change so the ignorant masses might not go off their reservation. The result was what came to be known as climate change. The climate was changing, you see. Therefore, everything could be blamed on climate change, whether the temperature was hot, cold, or temperate. The change was man-made and the cause of every disaster. Hurricane Katrina, the tsunami that destroyed Fukushima, Japan, all storms, all earthquakes were the result of climate change. Since Donald Trump refused to destroy American industry and loot the people to transfer the fruits of their labor to a consortium of global aristocrats, it could be said that climate change was his fault. Joe Biden has appointed John Kerry as climate czar, so we're not to worry, folks. Don't worry about it anymore. John Kerry's in charge of the climate now, so we can all rest easy. The world's climate is in good hands. The disaster of today is obviously COVID virus. Once again, we're told we should, quote, trust the science. Each of our leaders has different science, different orders. Dr. Fauci tells us that science requires that we refrain from giving thanks and refrain from celebrating the birth of Christ, but political protests are essential. They're just fine, our leaders tell us. We should all wear masks wherever we go. We would be better if we did not go at all. Keep your distance. Most of all, do not relate face-to-face with any other member of the controlled masses. The masks are compulsory in most areas, having been ordered by the government because of the science. The COVID tracking project, however, tells us that there is no difference in caseloads between places where the face masks are required by law and places where they are not required. None of us know whether they help or not, whether they help prevent the virus or not. We just don't know. Apparently, neither do the scientists. It really doesn't matter to our aristocrat class because what matters is that we willingly comply with their orders. The scientists exist in every society. They have all the intelligence, all the talent, ambition, and lust for power they need. But they must turn to government to have those desires fulfilled because the government has the only license to use force. They don't have such a license. The power they obtain over us from the government can quickly be converted into money, while the rest of us remain locked in our homes as their victims. These are the same people that claimed a special dispensation from God to control people prior to the French Revolution. They are the same people who went to the guillotine by the thousands because centuries elapse, but human nature does not elapse. It stays the same. Sleeping people sometimes, however, wake up. Even the woke generation finds it hard not to recognize the gross hypocrisy that we see every day from our ruling elite. Let me give you just a few examples, folks. The mayor of Austin, Texas, makes a video from his condo in Cabo San Lucas telling the people in Austin to stay in and not celebrate the holidays. That was just after hosting his daughter's wedding party at an Austin hotel before he boarded a private jet and flew away to Mexico. The governor of California issues an almost total lockdown for the state. But that night, he has dinner without mask at a restaurant called the French Laundry, which is $400 per plate, apparently the most famous and popular restaurant in California. The very next evening, the mayor of San Francisco has dinner at the same restaurant. The governor of California flies with a group of his friends and supporters to Hawaii for an impromptu vacation. The woke generation is seeing all this, but they still keep electing the same people. The virus, however, rages on. It's causing real, not imaginary problems. The temporary suspension by the government on evictions ends December 31st of 2020. The government has no choice but to do something because it's now an addict to free money and unlimited borrowing. They have to print and give away more money because if they do not, those control masses will be in the streets as they were in 1789. France, 11 million renters, 4 to 5 million mortgages are now in arrears and in forbearance. They will be evicted starting January 1st unless there is a huge bailout. So what do you think will happen, folks? Where will all these people go without the government's free money? The more the government prints and gives away, the bigger the pile of manure that makes up this nasty house of cards. The bigger the pile, the bigger the catastrophe that awaits us down the road. Millions of small businesses are on the verge of failure or have already failed. Airlines, restaurants, hotels, many other businesses may never recover. As my old friend Doug Casey points out, if you burn yourself over 15% of your body, you'll heal up and be fine. But if you suffer third-degree burns over 50% of your body, you're probably dead. This is happening with small business across America right now. 15% failure happens all the time, every day. But 50% are now failing at the same time. No aristocrat wants to have this pile of excrement come down unglued on his watch, so the desire to print and give away money will be overpowering for them. Banks, landlords, utility companies, local and municipal governments will all have to be subsidized as well. Mass bankruptcies and millions as wards of the state will result unless they are made wards of the state by the state first. How can a broke government help people in need? This one is $27 trillion in debt and already projected to spend $2 trillion more in this fiscal year than it takes in. That's before any more handouts happen. Economics used to be a simple matter, folks, very simple. Common sense, such as don't spend more than you earn. Then economists all went to Harvard or Wharton Business School. They all got PhDs, and presto, it's now pseudoscience. The result is that common sense is no longer common. It no longer makes sense. There is, of course, a group of people exempt from all this bad news. They could best be referred to as the protected class. They are the financial aristocrats who have accumulated so much money and wealth, so much property, that no matter what happens, they're protected from harm. They have no fear of the Great Reset because they assume they will be on the winning side. These people are the ones who normally pontificate on TV and the internet that the masses are just not practicing social distancing. The World Economic Forum has all this figured out for us, so don't worry about it. They got it under control, folks. In the new utopia the World Economic Forum projects for us, everything will be provided for you by a benevolent society of aristocrats. You'll have no privacy, be watched every minute. You'll own nothing because they own everything. You will, if you are good little children, though, be provided for. Well, folks, where is 1789 when you really need it? The truth is that this is going to work out one way or the other, so don't say I never bring you any good news. Right now, the ruling elite have their elves hard at work trying to figure out how to use your money to buy their votes. When they distribute the free loot, they will hopefully distribute some of it to all of us rather than just their chosen ones. You never know for sure, folks. But I have a feeling the plates will stay in the air for a few more years anyway. Finally, folks, it's not a pretty picture, is it? However, it is a realistic one that is probably certain but not imminent. I hope and pray that I'm wrong, but my guess is at least an educated guess. We are riding the relative calm at the eye of the hurricane right now, but we are close to passing through the eye to the strong winds on the other side. I pray for my family, for all of you, for the leaders of this country. At least that's the way I see it, folks. Until next time, this is Darrell Castle. Thanks for listening.